guys, welcome back to the Daily Raid YouTube channel. I know it's been a while. Please forgive me, I've been a bit sick over the past week or so, but we're back here today continuing the series I started a couple of weeks ago, which is Indians Select All-Time Club 11s. We've finished off with Real Madrid, Manchester United and Liverpool, and today we're continuing with another English Premier League team, and that is Arsenal. Now, Arsenal is the team that everybody loves to hate and everybody loves to clown on, but they are a very good team with a very rich history. And of course, I can't do this creating an all-time 11 team by myself. So I have a good friend of mine, a junior of mine from college, Richard, here with me. He's a huge Arsenal fan, huge football fan, huge sports fan, and he's going to help. He's going to create his all-time Arsenal 11, and I'm going to create my own. And at the end of the video, we're going to see who has the better all-time Arsenal 11. But Richard, before we start, anything you'd like to tell the people?
Hi guys, my name is Richard, and I think I've been an Arsenal fan since 2008. So this is an episode to which I'm actually looking forward to. So maybe I can also recollect a few of my Arsenal memories. So I'm looking forward to this episode.
Okay, so let's get right into the selecting. Since Richard is the guest, he will kick us off. And Richard, I believe you first selected a centre back for your team, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so who did you go with?
So at the centre back, I'm going with Martin Keown, and the reason that I'm going with Martin Keown is along with Tony Adams, he was Arsenal's one of most best and complete defenders that I've seen, the partnership with Tony Adams, and I think he's also a leader that we look up to on the pitch. So that's the reason I've gone with Martin Keown.
So Martin Keown is Richard's first selection, which means I had to select centre-back as well, and I went with the man he mentioned just a few seconds ago, Tony Adams, one of the greatest captains in Arsenal and Premier League history, was a part of one of the Premier League winning seasons, if I'm right, and yeah, just a solid centre-back, definitely one of the greatest centre-backs in Premier League history, and yeah, he is my selection at the centre-back spot. I got to select first next, and I went with the left winger. For context, both me and Richard have gone for a 4-3-3 formation, and in left wing I selected none other than Thierry Henry, perhaps the greatest Arsenal player of all time, maybe even the greatest Premier League player of all time. There's always been the debate between him and Cristiano Ronaldo. Just a solid player, pacey, can score goals, an incredible player, a legend of the game, and yeah, Thierry Henry was my left wing selection. Richard, who did you select in that position?
Yeah, so as you went with Henry, I think in every Arsenal fan's 11, Henry will obviously be there. So since you went with Henry, I'm going with the Henry before Henry, that is Ian Wright. So not just as a player, also as a great TV pundit and whatever he stands for at Arsenal. Like all the Arsenal fans, I think right from the 90s to the 2000s and this current generation, we have huge respect for Ian Wright, and that's the reason I've gone with Ian Wright.
So Ian Wright was the left wing selection that Richard went with. He had the next selection and he went with central defensive midfield. Very few options you can pick from, and understandably Richard got the top selection here. Richard, why don't you let us know who you ended up picking?
Yeah, so when it comes to central midfield, I think there's by default got to be only one option, and that is the man from the Invincibles era. So I've gone with Patrick Vieira. So we all knew like what Patrick stood for at Arsenal, the personality that he showed, and even the greatest defense at Arsenal, they have also mentioned that when you have Patrick just sitting in front of the in front of the back four, it's like an extra layer of security. So that's the reason I've all gone with Patrick Vieira, and he can score those crucial goals also, that is arriving late in the box. And I think he scored a few winning penalties also, the Community Shield. So yeah, that's the reason I've gone with Patrick Vieira.
So Patrick Vieira takes up the defensive midfield spot for Richard. I obviously had to select defensive midfield as well, and I went for the Brazilian Gilberto Silva. one player. He's a player that I haven't really watched play. Nor have I heard much about him in terms of writings and articles and reading about the player. But I do know he was a solid midfielder for Arsenal for a very long time. And yeah, Gilberto Silva, one of the few successful Brazilians in the Premier League, in my opinion. And yeah, he takes up my central defensive midfield spot. I decided to go for central midfield after that, which is basically the position a little higher above Gilberto Silva. And I selected Francesc Fabregas, the youngest captain in Arsenal history, or maybe he was, now that Odegaard is there. But Fabregas, such a talent, Spanish midfielder, you can't really go wrong there. Incredible football IQ, can pass the ball from anywhere onto the pitch. Just a top player. Of course, he spent his prime in Barcelona, but nobody can forget those incredible days he spent with Arsenal. One when he was 23, 24. Just a top talent, so he takes up my central midfield spot. Richard, who did you select in your central midfield spot?
Yeah, so when it comes to the central midfield spot, so I'm going for our current captain, like our skipper, Martin Odegaard. So as we all know about Martin Odegaard, he came in as a prodigy at Real Madrid. Then he came to Arsenal like via a loan move first, then the move became permanent. But I think he has the qualities of a proper modern day number 10. So not just the creativity in the midfield, but also the work rate. That is, you can often see him dropping back. At the same time, he also is the trigger of our press. Like, he coordinates the press really well. So that's the reason I've gone with Martin Odegaard. So because that shows he's a player who shows the Arsenal DNA, the current DNA. That is like great qualities on and off the ball, along with those clipped passes and those cheeky little back heels. That's the reason I've gone on with Martin Odegaard.
So Martin Odegaard takes up one of the central midfield spots for Richard. He went with the other central midfield spot next. And Richard, who did you select?
So when it goes to the other central midfield spot, from modern day number 10, I'm going to a traditional number 10 that is none other than Mesut Ozil. So I've been a big fan of Ozil right from his Bundesliga days to then when he came to Real Madrid. And then we all know what a genius of a playmaker he is, as we would have seen his greatest passes to Cristiano Ronaldo or his greatest passes at Arsenal. So he always he's a player whom you always want to be the person who's playing the final ball, along with his genius vision. That is, he can just bring out those passes out of nowhere. So that's the reason I've gone with the German playmaker Mesut Ozil.
So Mesut Ozil fills up the midfield for Richard. I had to select the next and final midfield spot for my 11. And I basically decided to go for another player that I never had the pleasure of watching. An English great for Arsenal, and that is Ray Parlour. I really can't tell you much about Ray Parlour, but he is considered one of the greatest central midfielders in Arsenal history. And I think that's reason enough for me to put him on my team. I had the next selection, and I decided to go for the goalkeeper slot, get that out of the way. And I went for perhaps Arsenal's greatest keeper of all time, David Seaman. Primarily functioned in the 90s and in the early 2000s of the Premier League era. But yeah, just an incredible keeper. Did a great job in between the sticks for Arsenal, especially when Arsene Wenger first came on board to the club. He takes up my goalkeeping spot. And while I have gone for an old school selection, Richard went for one a bit more modern. Richard, why don't you let us know who you selected in goalkeeper?
Yeah, so in goalkeeper, my modern selection is as modern as it gets. It's our current goalkeeper, David Raya. So the reason I've gone with David Raya is he's a proper modern day keeper, not just when it comes to shot stopping ability. I think he can play as a sweeper keeper as well, add as an extra man in the outfield. So we have already seen what David Raya is good at, and I think off late we also saw that he can sprint, and so that's the reason I've gone with David Raya. That is a modern day keeper, can be a good shot stopper as well as very good on the ball.
So David Raya was Richard's selection at the goalkeeper spot, and the key word here is modern, because his team is a very modern team in the way he plays and the way he's imagining them play, which is why he had a very interesting selection with his next one, and he went with right back. Richard, why don't you let us know who your right back selection was?
Okay, so when it comes to right back, although he was not there at Arsenal for a long period of time, but I've gone with Hector Bellerin. So the reason I've gone with Hector Bellerin is because I always like a one winger or a wing back who can just beat you for speed, like who can just like outright beat you for speed. That's the reason I've gone with Hector Bellerin. Another dimension about Hector Bellerin is, along with that speed, he's a La Masia graduate, and so he is also very technical on the ball. So these are two superior qualities that I value in a fullback. That's the reason I've gone with Hector Bellerin.
So Hector Bellerin was Richard's selection at the right back spot. An interesting selection, but like he said, he was going for a modern feel with a pacey right back and a La Masia graduate at that. So I had to select right back, and I went for perhaps, at least according to the history books, Arsenal's greatest right back of all time, and that is Lee Dixon. Again, another player I really don't know much about. I haven't had the pleasure of watching him play, but if you go off what people have said about him in the past, how he played as a player, and basically the legacy that he has as an Arsenal player, he is definitely fitting for this all-time team. The next selection I went for, was the right wing slot, and I decided to put in some modern flair here this time around, and I selected Arsenal star boy, their wonder kid, if you will, a player that many Arsenal fans will tell you, in their opinion, is the greatest right winger of all time, Bukayo Saka. While he's definitely not the greatest right winger of all time, in my opinion, he is a top talent, incredibly pacey, great technically, knows how to make a pass, knows how to score a goal, just a top player. And if he continues playing at the level he is right now, he definitely will get into those conversations for the greatest right winger of all time, perhaps even the greatest player of all time, but that is in the future. So yeah, Saka was my right wing selection. Richard, who did you go for in right wing?
Yeah, so this time I'm just going for somebody from the early 2000s. So I'm going with Mark Overmars because he is the man for special occasions. Like whenever we need a goal, it's Overmars who steps up. So that's the reason I've gone with Mark Overmars.
So Mark Overmars is the right wing selection for Richard. He had the next selection as well, and he went for the left back slot. Richard, who did you go for?
Yeah, so when it comes to the left back spot, again, this is a player that whom I've not watched a lot, but I've heard his stories on different Arsenal podcasts or different Arsenal videos. So I've gone with Nigel Winterburn. So the reason I've gone with Nigel Winterburn is because I think he played in the mid 90s, late 90s or the early 2000s. But he's a player who was like very top rated in Arsenal's best eras. That is the Arsene Wenger era, and before that the George Graham era also. So like I've seen a few clips of Nigel Winterburn playing, and I think although I'm not clear about the timeline exactly where he played in, but like he is the person who will fill in the left back spot for me, because I think he's very highly rated, and I've also seen a few glimpses of his talent. That's the reason I've gone with Nigel Winterburn.
So Nigel Winterburn fills up the left back slot for Richard. I had to select left back next, and I selected a player that perhaps Richard didn't go for, mainly because of the history that's there between Arsenal fans and this player. But considering I'm a United fan, that history doesn't bother me at all, which is why I went for Ashley Cole, or as the Arsenal fans would call him, Cashly Cole. Ashley Cole, perhaps the greatest left back in Premier League history. Great defensively, great on the attack. Just a top player. Was a part of that Invincibles team as well. Yeah, Ashley Cole. I don't think you can go wrong with Ashley Cole at the left back slot, and he fills up that spot for me in this Arsenal all-time 11. I had the next selection, which was the penultimate selection, and I went for my last centre-back spot. And I went for another player that, well, while he's not considered traitor to Arsenal, he's considered traitor to Spurs fans, and that is Sol Campbell. Sol Campbell is a Tottenham Hotspur Youth Academy product, and then immediately switched sides to Arsenal. But while he was considered a traitorous individual by Spurs fans, he was an absolute beast for Arsenal, and that's why he fills up that centre-back spot for me alongside Tony Adams. Richard, you had to select centre-back next. Who did you end up picking in that spot?
Yeah, so I think Sol Campbell was a great pick because we picked their skipper, and he went on to do great things at Arsenal. But I'm going with the modern day Rolls Royce, that is none other than William Saliba. And the reason that I've gone with William Saliba is because I think he's a proper modern day centre back. That is, he's good on the ball, good off the ball, can progress play, can play those progressive passes as well. But at the same time, I think off the ball, when it comes to the last man tackles and the ground duels, he's a pretty solid defender. That's the reason I've gone with William Saliba.
So William Saliba fills up that final centre-back slot for Richard. He of course had the final selection of this all-time selection and that's of course the striker spot. So Richard, who did you end up selecting at the striker position?
Yeah, so I think at the striker position, I think I've gone with the man with the Midas touch, player that Arsenal fans will never forget. That is none other than the Iceman, Dennis Bergkamp, because we all know the great goals that he scored. Like, I think I've watched football for a few years now, but I think he's had one of the greatest first touches when it comes to playing football. And we all know the goals that he scored, like let it be that goal against Newcastle or that goal against Argentina. So that's the reason I've gone with Bergkamp. And another thing that I would like to add about Bergkamp is he suits well in an Arsenal system, that is where you can play all these free-flowing passes. I think even in the final third, he can play those decisive passes, like let it be a chip ball or maybe those cheeky flicks that come in. At the same time, he can finish also. That's why I've gone with the Iceman, Dennis Bergkamp.
So Dennis Bergkamp finishes the Arsenal all-time 11 for Richard there. I had the final selection for this striker spot, and going along the same vibe as Ashley Cole and Sol Campbell, I selected another player who's considered a traitor, this time for Arsenal fans, and that is none other than RVP, Robin Van Persie. He ended up joining my favorite team, Man United, towards the tail end of his career. But yeah, just a goal-scoring machine, more so for Arsenal than he was a goal-scoring machine for United. But nevertheless, he did score goals for both teams. A great striker, could make an argument for one of the top 10 strikers in Premier League history. Robin Van Persie fills up my squad. And yeah, those are our teams complete. Let's just do a quick run through as to whom we have. Starting with my team, I've got David Seaman in goal, Lee Dixon at right back. My centre back pairing is Tony Adams and Sol Campbell. At left back, I've got Ashley/Cashley Cole. Gilberto Silva is in defensive midfield for me. I've got two central midfielders right in front of him, which is Fabregas and Ray Parlour. On the right wing, I've got Bukayo Saka. On the left wing, I've got Thierry Henry. And as striker, I've got Robin Van Persie. Richard, why don't you tell us about your team?
So my team, I've got David Raya in goal. And at left back, I have Nigel Winterburn. At right back, I have Hector Bellerin. And the centre back pairing I've gone with is William Saliba and Martin Keown. And sitting in front of the top four is none other than Patrick Vieira. And as the right side 8, I have Martin Odegaard. And as the left 8, I have Mesut Ozil. Then moving to the forward line, on the left wing, I have Ian Wright. On the right wing, I have Mark Overmars. And completing my lineup and leading the line for us is Dennis Bergkamp.
So yeah guys, those are our two starting 11s, our two all-time Arsenal 11s. I think we've both given our reasons as to why we've made certain selections. But now it's up to you guys to decide who has the better all-time Arsenal 11. Feel free to get down in the comment section below and let us know who exactly won. And yeah, I'd like to thank Richard for coming on and doing this video with me. Hopefully we can have him on for another video sometime in the future as well, be it football related or sports related in general. But yeah guys, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.